I lived in this dorm that was nicknamed the leper dorm because it was away from all the other dorms. I made a whole HyperCard experience about the leper dorm, and then I tried to pitch it to the school to get them to put it on the website. They didn't go for it. That was a missed opportunity. Made Daily. Hello and welcome to the Made Daily podcast. I'm John Michael Thomas.
I'm Pierre Hegeman.
Made Daily covers our favorite stories from tech to social media,
our expert thoughts and opinions about information security, website design, and development,
and other random stories from across the interwebs. This week's episode of Made Daily podcast is made possible by Cinemechanics, the premier camera and lens rental house when you're shooting your next film, commercial, or popular streaming platform TV series. Cinemechanics will ensure your project stays next level.
And Made Daily version 5, the all-in-one secure website builder with built-in data collection tools and secure customer portals.
And one of our way back internet favorites, the video game Myst.
Good game.
Good game. I went to the Cinemechanics Lens Bar, which was a very cool concept. They had all of the premier, signature, top-end lenses, and everybody was multiple monitors, 2 cameras, seeing and comparing and contrasting each lens. It was quite the nerd fest, but I learned a ton, and it was a great way to see, because they're like, what's the Techno series lenses like, or the signature series lenses, and it's the only way you could really.
So which one was the best?
I like the tech. I don't remember any of the names because I'm terrible with names of things, but one of the Techno lenses, the anamorphics, was really, really nice. And there's different uses,
Just ask them. They'll tell you which lens to use.
That's why you work with a cinematographer, right? Let's talk about current tech news and events.
Yeah, let's talk about WordPress. WordPress versus WP Engine. So if you don't know about WordPress, then I don't know where you've been living. But WordPress...
Raise your hand if you've used WordPress.
Yeah. The WordPress is a blog, originally a blog engine, but it's morphed into the largest content management software in the world, powering something like 40% or more of the world's websites. Anyway, WP Engine is a company that uses WordPress and sells essentially hosting for WordPress. And they got into this huge fight with WordPress.com starting a few weeks ago.
And from what I understood, they basically took over or co-opted a plugin.
You mean WordPress.com?
Yeah.
Not exactly. What they did was they blocked access to WP Engine blocked access for WP Engine to WordPress.com's plugin repository. So any sites that were hosted on WP Engine couldn't access the plugin list and couldn't update their plugins, which, as we all know, outdated WordPress plugins are the number one threat vector for websites, and the way that sites get hacked all the time. So WordPress.com blocking access to plugin updates is a big deal, and so it caused a lot of issues for WP Engine sites and a lot of uncertainty in kind of this open source WordPress community.
And is it I'm looking at the article, it's saying .org, WordPress.org. What's the difference between .com, .org? Or is it the same in your mind?
Well, the domain I think is .com. So Automatic is the company that hosts kind of WordPress. I can't remember his last name. Matt
Mullingweg.
Yeah, that guy. So he started Automatic and was I think the original developer for WordPress, and he's still in control of WordPress.com and that whole WordPress VIP hosting. That's all through Automatic, and then WP Engine is a separate company, not affiliated with them at all. They've just taken the open source WordPress software and created a bunch of infrastructure around it to allow people to host on their systems. Now, the main kind of underlying sort of argument that they're having is that WordPress doesn't the WordPress wants they're kind of jealous that WP Engine is making all this money, right? And WP Engine doesn't contribute anything back to the
Hmm.
project. So Matt is saying, you're not paying for any of this, and then so he got all upset and started blocking stuff, and he's called WP Engine a cancer to the WordPress. It's a whole big thing, right? And
This
I
this is this is what WP Engine. Yeah, he said Matt Mullingweg's unprecedented and unwarranted action interferes with the normal operation of the entire WordPress ecosystem, impacting not just WP Engine and our customers. That's on the article, but
yeah,
all WordPress plugin developers to open source who depend on WP Engine. So
or
it gets into but it gets into the question of like who controls the platform, right? Remember when Facebook was that we had Adobe Flash get canceled off of phones, and then there was something with Facebook, and that Apple changed privacy settings, and things started to work different for Facebook.
I mean, it's the risk with any kind of proprietary system. It's a little bit more confusing, I think, in an open source context, right? Because if you're a lot of people like to use WordPress because it is open source, because it is available. So then if you're using it with the assumption that it can't be taken away from you because it's open source, and then it turns out actually it can be taken away from you because the plugin repository is controlled by a single organization, I think that sows a lot of uncertainty in people's minds around, should I use WordPress? Is it safe? Is it going to go away? And I think WP Engine is a large provider of WordPress services, so they were the target. But anybody who gets too big for Automatic to feel comfortable with could experience the same thing. I would almost say it's more confusing in the context of open source WordPress than say that Apple example or any
Right.
other. When you buy a SaaS product from a vendor, right, you expect that vendor is going to control that product, and you understand that you're licensing it from that vendor. When you're using an open source software, you don't necessarily expect that that's going to be um, under the control of a single organization, right? And in this case, it's actually not the WordPress software; it's the plugin libraries, right? It's the plugin repository. So I expect what will happen is there will be an alternative plugin repository that gets created, similar to how you have like different app stores on the phones.
Mhm.
You have Google Play, and then you have Amazon has their own app store, and everybody now has an app store. I expect that's probably what's going to happen to
And this
prevent this from
affected,
happening again. Sorry.
yeah, and this affected people worldwide because we were looking at BBC even wrote an article with this small business owner Trisha in Scotland, who had 70 websites affected.
Yeah.
And she's saying she can't run a business on this level of uncertainty. I mean, it's kind of surprising that something like this hasn't happened already, because it's a WordPress is a massive part of the web, and it's really, I mean, I would say it's a little bit maybe too big now.
Well, we've always talked about how WordPress doesn't really belong in the space that it's in. At least in my mind, I like it's just it's it's not a great content management system. It's clear that Automatic and Matt Mullenweg is in the wrong here. He should not be blocking access to to large swaths of the internet to update their plugins because he's upset with a single company. Now, I do kind of see his point where somebody has taken a software that he wrote or that his company develops, and without paying for it has now made a huge business, and is making, well, he claims billions of dollars. I don't know how much money WP Engine makes, but the thing is, when you develop an open source software, that's kind of the risk that you run, right? For doing that, people can take it and use it how they want to, especially, given the licensing. There are ways around that, right? He could change the license and say you can't use it for commercial purposes, or you can't, you have to, for a commercial purpose, you have to buy a commercial license.
And that was what the argument was over. He wanted him to he wanted him to pay a licensing fee.
Well, he can't really do that because they could just use a previous version of the software that was licensed under a different license. But what he it was actually a trademark dispute, right? He wants
Right.
them to pay for the use of the WordPress trademark because they're WP Engine, and he's claiming that they are confused for a WordPress service. That's kind of his legal claim. I don't know if that's going to hold any water, but
Well, they reached 400 million in 2024. So,
I mean, that's a good chunk of change, and eh, I would say they should contribute back to the community, but that's they're not
yeah.
required to do so.
But it is kind of a bit of an issue too. If you can't update your plugins, then there's a security and potential uh, attack vector that's open, which isn't a good thing. In the long run, this isn't a good dispute.
Yeah, no, it's not good, and it's not good. Nobody is better by having the internet be less secure. Right? It's not good for any of us.
So WP Engine filed the case against Mullenweg and Automatic with the accusations of extortion, libel, and violation of Computer Fraud and Abuse Act among its complaints. It claims Automatic told WP Engine they would have to pay tens of millions of dollars in order to continue using WordPress trademarks. Well, it's also kind of interesting too, is like, even though it's open source, the trademark's not open source.
Right. Yeah.
Just wait till that trademark runs out. If WordPress is around at that time, is 120 years for a
I don't think trademarks expire as long as you're using them. It's not a patent, right? So yeah. Yeah, I mean, if WP Engine were to lose that legal battle, which seems unlikely to me, worst case they just change their name to something else, right?
PW Engine done.
W Engine, yeah, or yeah, Engine Press. I don't even know. It doesn't matter. Something else, and then they don't have a trademark problem. There is still
It says a trademark lasts 10 years. Registration lasts 10 years.
Well, then you just renew it though. They're infinitely renewable.
Renewable, I see.
Yeah. It does still leave open this plugin repository issue, and I think the only way around that would be for WP Engine themselves. They certainly have the resources to do it, or the community to create a separate plugin repository that doesn't rely on Automatic.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about SSL, which stands for Secure Sockets Layer.
Yeah, so the SSL is actually kind of a misnomer. SSL is what the protocol used to be called many, many years ago. It's now morphed to TLS, which is Transport Layer Security. And we're actually on, I think, 3.2. Stand by. We are on 1.3. Yeah.
And the purpose is to protect customers' data. E-commerce businesses and owners should, keep their website secure with an SSL certificates being a key requirement for safeguarding personal and payment information. Without an SSL certificate, search engine rankings can also decline and browsers may block access to the site. And this was a recent thing that Google started mandating, that websites are SSL. So Pierre, why don't you talk a little bit about what it's actually doing,
Yeah.
and what is it, and what do you do if you don't have one?
So TLS is, like I said, transport layer security. So what that means is when your browser connects to the web server, it does a little encryption key negotiation dance, and then your communication between your browser and that computer is encrypted in transit. So theoretically, if somebody is on the same network as you in the coffee shop or wherever you are, they can't read the information that you're sending to the website. If it's not SSL encrypted, right? If you just see HTTP in the browser, now all the browsers have a warning. It says not secure up in the URL bar there. If you don't have SSL, then anybody can see anything that you send or receive from that website, right? So it's completely plain text, and it's very, very simple to sniff and intercept that traffic, right? So that's the main thing that it's doing, is it's encrypting the traffic between your browser and the server. A secondary benefit to SSL or TLS is the server, the host, say it's google.com or madedaily.com, they have to get a certificate that um, cryptographically signed. It's signed by a third-party authority called a certificate authority that says, yes, this domain madedaily.com is owned, or at least is it under the control of the person who owns this server, right? So it's a sort of an authentication mechanism where I can say, if I'm connecting to madedaily.com and it has a certificate, then it means that the server that I'm connecting to is owned by that organization and it's safe to send data to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's different kinds of the companies have tried to make money off of SSL certificates for decades. They used to have the extended validation where the certificate authority would they would like do a bunch of extra they would call the company and validate that the person ordering the certificate works for the company, that the company is legitimate and stuff, and then you would get a green bar, right? You remember those?
Mm-hmm.
Those have
Mm-hmm.
kind of fallen out of favor, I think, because Google doesn't care about it, so nobody else cares about it. So that was a big thing for a while, that you would get the extended validation. Now, issuing certificates is fairly automated. Google and a couple other companies got together and created this. It's called Let's Encrypt, right? It runs under a protocol called Acme, which is kind of a throwback to the old Bugs Bunny stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's an automated system for issuing certificates, and they issue certificates that last for 3 months, so you have to renew them fairly often. But it's a good system, and it makes it really easy for software providers or hosting providers to have certificates on every site, right? It's not really for individuals. Like if you own a website and you're spinning up your server, I mean, there's a good chance that there's a plugin, or your hosting provider has some mechanism for you to get certificates from Let's Encrypt, but it's more for the companies that are providing the services, right? Um,
So there's three types: domain validated, organizational validated, and extended validation.
as far as the certificates go,
Or three
yeah,
types of
the
certificates.
most common one now is domain validation, and that's where what they do is you say, I want a certificate for this site, and then Google or Acme Let's Encrypt says, okay, here's a super long string that you need to put somewhere on your web server, and we're going to check it. And if we find it there, then we believe that you own this web server. Then you can have a certificate. And
Mhm.
so then they go to the domain you're trying. So say I want to get a certificate from madedaily.com. They'll go to madedaily.com slash some well-known slash long thing. And then if I return the right response, they say, yep, okay, madedaily.com DNS is pointing to this server, so that means there's a good chance it's right. So then they'll issue the certificate, you can get it, and then you have TLS encryption on your server, which is
And
great.
most website builders have this in some automatic fashion now, or there's a partner that they recommend. If it's a hosting company like a, that just hosts a WordPress site or something, then they have a partner that they work with.
Yeah,
There are lots of sites though that don't have SSL, and so the only reason you need it though is if you're transmitting any information from the website to somewhere that you would need to protect, right? So if there's no forms, would you need SSL?
I
If there was a
guess.
plugin running that you didn't know about, you'd probably want it.
I mean, I think so. Theoretically, no. If it's just a static website and you're not collecting any information and you're just sending out something that's absolutely public information, it probably doesn't matter. But the cost and effort level of getting a certificate and making your site SSL enabled is so low that I think there's no reason to ever not have a certificate. Everybody should
What
have a certificate all the
what
time.
and what's it cost per year?
Yeah, well, Let's Encrypt is completely free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Um,
$10 or
if you were to
give or
buy a
take.
certificate from, I mean, I think there are still certificate authorities that will sell certificates, but there's no
A lot of
there's
times it's just included.
yeah, there's no real reason to do that. Like
Yeah.
if you're getting a server from Amazon, Amazon has a free certificate authority that you can use, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that the other cloud providers are doing the same thing, and yeah, and like I said, Let's Encrypt is completely free, so you just need a there are web servers. Caddy web server will do it completely automatically for you. You don't have to do anything. You just turn it on, and it will handle it for you. So it's not hard. Everybody should do it. If you don't have SSL on your server, you are absolutely getting penalized by Google um, in your
The
search
only
engine rankings. So
and I was even trying to find some sites that didn't have SSL, and it was actually very very hard.
yeah,
And it's funny because the ones that do are probably old sites that somebody's hanging on to for archiving or nostalgia, which is sad, and because they all get that scary like this site is not secure.
I see
But
it. I actually see it not super frequently now, but not infrequently, I guess. With if there's like you know older businesses or smaller businesses that don't update their website very often. Say the last time they updated was 2002, 2003, right? And they've just been running forever with this old website. There's a good chance that those don't have certificates because back then it was way harder than it is now. Um,
we are
so
working with the client right now that doesn't have a certificate on their site, and we'll be
exactly,
updating their site, bringing them on Made Daily. So
yeah. So there's no reason not to do it in 2024. Everybody should have a certificate, um, yeah, and that's it.
but it also shouldn't be something that is an SSL certificate should not be hard to obtain, and it shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg, and if somebody's telling you that sort of stuff, they don't know what they're talking about.
If anybody's charging for a certificate, you should look into why, I think.
Because you can get it from your domain registrar. I do think some of these domain registrars charge you a little extra for it, but I think it's like $10 a year. It's not too bad because there is a renewal process, and you know you have
They
to keep records and stuff on them, but
they shouldn't.
shouldn't.
It should be like, yeah. You shouldn't. I would say you shouldn't probably try to get a certificate from your domain registrar it should come from your hosting provider because they're
Yeah.
closer to the servers, unless you're buying your website hosting from your domain registry. Like say it's GoDaddy and you're using GoDaddy's web builder,
Yeah.
fine. Then yeah, get your certificate through them. But if you're using a different, like for example, Made Daily, it just comes with it. Any
Yeah.
domain you attach to our software, it automatically issues a certificate for that. There's no reason our clients never even see it or have to worry about it at all. It just happens. And that, I think it's the responsibility of the providers to do that.
Mm-hmm. SSL. All right, I want to dig into our Wayback Element. Something that's probably familiar to lots of people is HyperCard. And it was developed by a guy named Bill Atkinson at Apple. They say following an LSD trip where he had this epiphany to make this piece of software that began in 1985 under the name Wildcard. Wild Bill, you know. And so in 1986, Dan Winkler began work on HyperTalk, and the name was changed to HyperCard for trademark reasons. I used HyperCard in college. I built my very first interactive experience in HyperCard, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I know that Myst was a very popular, groundbreaking game. And it's also kind of like interesting because HyperCard was a software stack, like the first software stack. And I did read something about it. Was initially thought it was going to be used as a Rolodex, which seems, from what I know about HyperCard, a little bit of overkill. But you could visually flip through your cards. Did you ever play Myst, Pierre?
Yeah, I didn't play it on the Mac. I played it on the PC, but I loved Myst. It's such a cool concept of like the books, and it was I I think it was one of the first games I had that ran on a CD-ROM, and it had video in there. You remember where like when you got one of the pages and they would have like a little snippet, and you would kind of stitch them all together and figure out what the story was behind the guys. And another thing I liked about the game is that there wasn't really a good guy. They were all bad. As far as I recall, I don't remember very
So this
much.
was
It's old.
around 1993, made by Rand and Robin Miller, published by Cyan Inc. and then Broderbund, which I remember those guys too. I had a lot of games on my PC for them. And Mistwood, the game was kind of like, to describe it, it was like you'd turn a page in a book basically, and then things were hot or clickable within the book. And sometimes it was just a straight picture. Other times there was something more engaging and interactive on the pages. And from what I remember too, it was like kind of like we were talking. We'd always talk about it like it was like the Choose Your Own Adventure book came
Mm-hmm.
online. Um, and that is still a really popular like game format. You can go onto Steam and you can still get these like you know um, games about hunting for dinosaurs or whatever it might be. Interesting.
Speaking of old games, I just saw that the Monkey Island, if you ever played that, they had a new one come out recently, which I haven't played it yet, but I love that one too. That was kind of around the same time as Myst, I think, the original
And
Monkey
you
Island. Those were
and
fun.
you can get emulators for
Mm.
HyperCard games apparently still. So I'll tell you so I had Computer Imaging 1 at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and we had a lab full of Mac 2CI computers up in the like drawing studio, because they were actually, MCAD was early adopter of email and things like that. But HyperCard was one of our assignments. We had to make a HyperCard thing. You had to learn about it. And I lived in this dorm that was nicknamed the Leper Dorm because it was away from all the other dorms. And I made a whole HyperCard experience about the leper dorm, where you could go in and you could go into everybody's apartment, and there was always something unique to interact with each one, or different music or whatever. That's what I did. And then I tried to pitch it to the school to get them to put it on the website as like a thing for, to experience dorm life, but they didn't go for it. That was a missed opportunity.
Nice. We didn't have apples in the computer program at Carleton. We only had they had Solaris machines, and I think Next Step maybe. Can't remember exactly. It was mostly Unix that we used. We did all of our programming in a language called Scheme, which I did not like very much.
Interesting. This was I think the language is HyperTalk.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, HyperCard kind of was they got my toe wet, and then we were working in Macromedia Director. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
It was a way you could author an app for desktop, or you could burn it to a CD-ROM, but there was a whole bunch of extra steps. You had to write some sort of executable to get it to actually work on the CD-ROM.
Yeah, that was the precursor to Flash, I think. Macromedia Director.
Yeah, it was right around, and then we were working in Lingo, Macromedia Director Lingo, and there that actually opened up the paradigm and was a step further, because you could do video. So I made I wish I had an old Mac to fire up. I could put these CDs in, but I made a whole game that was about hide and seek, 6 cameras, 6 points of view. I rented every high 8 camera the media center had, and got everybody together for like a couple hours one night to play hide and seek. And it was fun because you could do a kind of it was like a choose your own adventure game, because you had 8 different streams to watch. But the challenge with that stuff was, okay, this is your idea. It's simple to program, but it was so many hours of editing and compressing the video down and figuring out what frame rate the video had to be so it would play on the device and not just like freeze.
Yeah.
So then it was like, then you had to learn like what codec it had to be rendered in. And we get a little bit of that stuff today, but there was a lot of technical parameters, which kind of comes back full circle to our first story, which is, a lot of this technology and stuff is always about trying to stay on top of things, and things evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Things don't play. Looking for like this way back, thing for the podcast here. There's stuff I'd like to show, but you can't show it.
Yeah. Well, Archive, they had their ransomware attack not that long ago, so I'm not sure they're fully back online yet, but hopefully soon.
But you mentioned Flash. Like Flash doesn't play unless you have the right OS and the right browser.
Well, yeah, you can get emulators, but yeah, Flash is. I'm glad Flash is dead. Flash was terrible.
Yeah. I did a lot of projects in Flash.
I'm sure, yeah. I remember they had like the Flash splash screens that would like load up,
Skip
and then
intro.
you'd have to you'd have to click through to get. That was awful.
Skip intro. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, but also was a time too where video wasn't really where it is now. So video, you can make things in Flash that were unplayable in video. You couldn't do high-end production video. Now you can do video, and I think we're definitely in a better place in terms of communication and all that.
Yeah, now with HTML5 and JavaScript, there's really nothing that you can't do natively in the browser that you could do in Flash. Maybe some things, but I think the use cases are fairly minimal. So, like I said, I'm glad it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
But till the next thing comes around the corner.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a browser plugin, because those are the like Flash and Acrobat readers. Like those were massive infection vectors for malware, right? Because you get a bug in it, and it's operating at a low level in your browser or in your operating system because it has to access all your hardware to work. And so then
You
it
know, and that's
just causes
and
problems.
and that's where the invention of the hardware device like the iPhone kind of helped put some guardrails on some of this stuff too. Because I mean, there was the web, and then we had the video games, and then we started going through all the different consoles,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, they're all in different languages. And now that you get everything through one device, it makes it a little easier to kind of maintain consistent user experience and programmatical standards in some ways.
Yeah, I think that comes at the expense of diversity. I mean, I don't
Sure,
know.
that's true. Yeah, there was some cool experiential stuff that you just probably would never do anymore.
And I mean, now I think we've lost a lot of the sort of, yeah, experience and sort of a wonder almost that you had in the early internet. Now that all of the internet is controlled by basically, 3 or 4 companies, and you know, you see
I
what
was,
they want you to see, what is profitable for
yeah,
them that you see, right?
yeah. I was looking for that old, it was Memento, the movie, the old website for Memento that
Mm,
was like Memento spelled backwards. And it was this goofy, like movie collage, kind of like a Myst kind of
mm,
experience where you could kind of go through and hear different clips from the game. And it was very immersive and kind of was like intriguing to like, it was like an interactive movie trailer.
mm,
Doesn't play anymore.
yeah.
Somebody recorded it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
All right. Should we wrap things up?
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. If you want to check out any of the stories or topics we covered, head over to madedaily.com/blog. And if you have a story you'd like to share or site you'd like reviewed, please leave us a comment. Or if you have a topic we didn't discuss or you want us to get into something more, let us know.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Until next time.
Stay secure.
Made Daily.